Magic Ballerina. Delphie and the Glass Slippers. Delphie's Adventures. Written by Darcey Bussel. Prologue. In the soft, pale light, the girl stood with her head bent and her hands held lightly in front of her. There was a moment's silence, and then the first notes of the music began. For as long as the girl could remember, music had seemed to tell her of another world, a magical, exciting world that lay far, far away. She always felt if she could just close her eyes and lose herself, then she would get there. Maybe this time. As the music swirled inside her, she swept her arms above her head, rose onto her toes and began to dance. 1. A new term begins. Holding onto the bar with one hand, Delphie Durand drew her toe up to her knee and pointed her leg forward. Head up, back straight, shoulders down. The thoughts tumbled around in her head as she watched herself in the mirror of the ballet studio. Alongside her were 9 other girls, all gracefully performing the same exercise. Bar work was quite repetitive and not as much fun as actually dancing in the center of the room, but Delphie was just glad to be doing ballet again. Madame Zaza's school of ballet had been closed for 2 weeks over the Christmas holidays, and Delphie had really missed going to classes. Keep your knee turned out, Delphie. Graceful arms, please, Suki. Madame Zaza walked along the line, gently correcting each girl. Keep your body centered and straight, Poppy. Delphie thought back to the last term. It had been such fun. The best bit had been dancing the main part in the school's Christmas show. Actually, no, she thought, correcting herself. The very best bit of last term had been finding out that the old red ballet shoes that Madame Zaza had given her were magic. The shoes could whisk Delphie away to Enchantia, a land where all the characters from different ballets lived. Delphie had been there many times now, and she had always had an amazing adventure. I wonder when I'll go there again, she thought. Good, Madame Zaza said finally when she reached the end of the line, but as she turned away, Delphie saw her pass a hand over her forehead and sigh. Madame Zaza looked very weary. And to the center now, please, girls, she instructed. The girls began to repeat the exercises in the center of the room. By the end of the class, Delphie's muscles were tingling from all the work. She felt tired but happy. Poppy and Lola, Delphie's 2 best friends, ran over to her. Come on! Let's go and get changed. In a minute, Delphie told them. She went over to Madame Zaza. The teacher smiled. You danced very nicely today, Delphie, she said in her slight foreign accent. Thank you. A warm glow spread through Delphie at the praise. She hesitated. You look tired, Madame Zaza. Are you all right? Madame Zaza sighed. I am tired. Sometimes I wonder if I am getting too old for all of this. She swept her hand around the dance studio. Delphie stared at her. You're not too old. Of course you're not. Madame Zaza had graying hair and there were a few wrinkles around the corners of her eyes, but she could still dance really well and she was very elegant and beautiful. You've got to keep teaching ballet, Delphie said. Maybe it is just because it is my birthday next week that I am thinking like this, Madame Zaza spoke gently. I will be another year older, another year will have passed. She looked affectionately at Delphie. Do not worry about me though, child. Delphie joined Poppy and Lola feeling very worried. What was Madame Zaza talking about? Lola asked. I'll tell you when we get to Poppy's, said Delphie. Back at Poppy's house, the 3 girls hurried up to her bedroom. So what's going on with Madame Zaza? Lola asked. Delphie sat down cross-legged on Poppy's large double bed and told her friends what Madame Zaza had said. But she can't give up teaching, said Poppy. No way. We won't let her, said Lola. She didn't exactly say she would give up teaching, said Delphie. Only that she was weary of it all. But maybe we can do something that will make her remember how good it is. Like what? Demanded Lola. They all thought hard for a moment and then Delphie's eyes widened. Perhaps we could try and cheer her up by learning a special dance? She said it was her birthday next week, we could perform it then. It would be our way of saying thank you for teaching us and telling her how much we love her classes. Oh yes, breathed Poppy. That's a cool plan, said Lola. We could try and work something out now? Great, said Delphie. They began to talk about what music they could use and what dance they could do. It was hard to choose. I think Swan Lake, said Lola. We could all be swans. It's not very birthday-like though, is it? Said Poppy, just as her mum called them all for tea. They sat down at the table. How about we do a dance from the Nutcracker, said Delphie. We could use the music from the Land of Sweets. They all nodded. Let's try and make up a dance after tea, said Lola. But when they tried, the music from the Land of Sweets seemed very fast and they kept losing track of where they were and all ended up doing different things at different times. This isn't working, sighed Delphie. If we show this to Madame Zaza, it'll be sure to make her want to give up teaching altogether. Delphie! Lola! Your mums are here. Poppy's mother called up the stairs. Let's all think about it tonight and phone each other tomorrow, Delphie suggested. Good plan. Poppy nodded as she waved Delphie and Lola off from the house. Delphie ran down the steps and into her mother's waiting car. As she sat in the back seat on the way home, she stared out of the window. She so wanted them to perform something special for Madame Zaza to make her smile. But what? 2. Off to Enchantia. Delphie was still thinking about it when she went to bed that night and finally fell asleep. When she woke a little while later, the house was in darkness and quiet apart from a faint tinkling sound. Delphie's eyes flew to the end of her bed. Her red ballet shoes that were hanging there were sparkling and glowing. Delphie's heart leapt. Her friends in Enchantia needed her. Jumping up, she started to put on the shoes, wondering what was happening. She was only ever whisked to Enchantia when there was a problem. Where would she go? Would it be to the theater, which was the entrance to the magical world, or maybe she would go to Princess Aurelia's palace again? Excitement raced through Delphie as she crossed the ribbons around her ankles and tied them. She couldn't wait to find out. As she finished tying the last ribbon, she started to twirl round. The shoes spun her faster and faster until she was twirling in a haze of rainbow colors. She felt herself being lifted up and then coming down again. As her feet met the ground, the swirl of colors vanished and she opened her eyes. She was standing in a dimly lit room which had a wonky table, a little stool, a threadbare rug and a small hard bed. It didn't look like the beautiful royal palace and it certainly wasn't the theater. So where was she? Hearing the sound of crying, Delphie looked around. Behind her there was a fireplace with a few old embers glowing in the grate. A beautiful girl with long blonde hair was sitting beside it. She was wearing a ragged brown dress, an old shawl, and she had a golden locket around her neck. She was so busy crying she hadn't seen Delphie. Hello, Delphie said. The girl gasped. Who are you? She scrambled to her feet, tucking the locket quickly inside her clothes. I'm Delphie. The girl looked at Delphie's ballet shoes. Of course. You're the girl with the red ballet shoes. Oh, have you come to help me? I'll try, said Delphie. What's your name and what's wrong? I'm Cinderella, although everyone apart from my ugly sisters calls me Cinders. I'm supposed to be a princess by now and be married to my handsome prince, but, oh, Cinderella started to cry again. Something's gone horribly wrong and it's all King Rat's fault. Delphie's heart sank. She'd met King Rat before and he was horrible. He lived in a smelly castle and he hated dancing. He was always trying to stop it and to cause problems for everyone else in Enchantia. What's he done this time? She said. Cinderella pushed her long hair back from her face. The whole thing started just after I became a princess. I was living in the palace and having such a lovely time. But then King Rat invited me and Prince Charming to a party at his castle. I didn't want to go because King Rat's so mean. I said no, and King Rat got really cross because he'd already told people that we would be there. He said we had to go, and when I wouldn't, he turned back time to before I became a princess to punish me. So now I'm back living here again and being bossed around by my ugly sisters. That's horrible, said Delphie. But surely it'll be okay. If he's turned back time, all the things that happened will happen all over again. You'll be invited to the ball, you'll see the fairy godmother, and you'll meet Prince Charming. It'll be all right. It won't. Cinder's voice rose to a wail. Every night I see my fairy godmother and get to the ball all right, but as soon as I get there, time jumps forward to midnight, and then as the clock finishes chiming midnight, time jumps back and I end up here in the afternoon before the ball again. King Rat has somehow cast a time spell, so it just keeps happening over and over again. I never meet the prince and I never get to leave my slipper, and I always end up back in rags. Oh. Delphie didn't know what to say. Can you help me? Cinderella begged. I'll try, Delphie promised. My fairy godmother should be here any moment, said Cinderella. Delphie had just started to nod when there was a bright silver flash and Cinder's fairy godmother appeared. She was wearing a beautiful blue dress with a skirt that sparkled as if it was covered by stars. Oh, Cinders. I am sorry to see you here again, she said sadly. I wish I could do something and make the evening work out as it should. It's all right, fairy godmother, said Cinderella. Delphie with the magic ballet shoes is here. She's going to try and help me. A smile lit up the fairy godmother's face as she looked at Delphie. Hello, Delphie. I have heard all about you from my friend the Sugar Plum Fairy. She danced over lightly on her toes and took Delphie's hands. I am so glad you are here. None of us can work out what type of spell King Rat has cast to change time like this, so we don't know how to stop it. I really hope you can help us. Delphie forced herself to smile, but inside she was feeling worried. This seemed a really difficult problem to solve. If no one in Enchantia could work out how King Rat was doing the time spell, how would she be able to? Still, she reminded herself, problems here always seem difficult, but I've solved lots so far. Maybe I can help again. She lifted her chin. I'll do my best, she said. Can Delphie come to the ball with me so she can see what happens? Asked Cinders eagerly. Of course she may, said her fairy godmother. She can go as your seamstress. Have you got the pumpkin, the white mice and the frogs, Cinderella? Cinderella pulled out a pumpkin, a cage and a box from under her bed.